Hello beautiful people, my name is Amanda Zitto. If you are new here, I make motorcycle travel vlogs, how-tos, and general encouragement for you to get out and do the thing. Today we're going to be talking about motorcycle camping kitchen setups. And I've watched a bunch of other YouTube videos about this topic, but most of what I can find is more like show and tell of people's personal gear, which is totally awesome. But my goal today is to show you some of your options and maybe bring up some things you may not have thought about so that you can set up your personal camping kitchen setup to do whatever you need it to do on the road, whether that's just boil in the bag food, dehydrated food, that kind of stuff, or if you're gonna get a little bit more fancy, make some nice meals while you're camping in the woods, in the desert, wherever you go camping. Okay. Shout out to Moto Camp Nerd, the sponsor of today's video. If you are just getting started motorcycle camping, or if you're one of my many followers who haven't tried yet but want to, they do have a whole section on their website for budget beginner kits. Or if you are an experienced moto camper and you're just looking to upgrade a few things, if you head on over to motocampnerd.com and use the code Magpie at checkout, you can get 10% off of your order, which I think is pretty cool. They carry a lot of the gear that I already use and love, and they did send me a couple new pieces that I'm very excited about to use in this upcoming season. Camping gear is just about as personal as your motorcycle. Everybody has their own preference. There's a lot of specialty equipment out there that is made for camping that you can find a lot of cheaper alternatives for that do the same job. They might not always be as lightweight or as compact, but they do the same job. Let's start with just the essentials that you need to make food at camp. Fuel, a camping stove, a way to light that camping stove, whether your camping stove has an igniter or not, a pot, an eating utensil, a way to clean up afterwards, and water storage. That's it. That's the simplest kit that you need. We can make this simpler. Hold on. I'm sure that you've heard of jet boils. MSR also makes a very similar thing to the jet boil called the wind burner that I really enjoy. It's super compact. It's really only good for boiling water, but if you're a dehydrated meal person, this is perfect. It's very compact. You can fit your fuel, the whole stove, and there's your pot and a bowl to eat out of. But we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. Having the simplest setup won't always make the fanciest meals though. This is more for like pre-made food. Cans of soup, cans of chili, packets of oatmeal, dehydrated meals, freeze-dried meals, stuff that really only needs hot water to make. Now I hear a few people saying that I don't need a camp stove, I use a campfire to cook, which is awesome. But I live in the Western United States where we have a fire ban part of the year, almost every year. Having a camping stove, even just a small one as backup, gives you a versatility that only relying on a campfire to cook with doesn't give you. With that out of the way, let's get into more kit options and things to make making food at camp a little nicer. Starting with camping stoves, we have the ones that we're most familiar with here in the United States, like Jetboil, MSR wind burners, pocket rockets, Primus stoves, things like that that use an isobutane mixture as their fuel. But there are also camping stoves like the Dragonfly that use petrol or gas as their fuel supply. There are also propane stoves. Those are a little bit bigger and not always as portable for motorcycle campers. There are also newer camp stoves now that just require wood as their fuel, although it's a lot harder to manage your heat. Every kind of stove and every kind of fuel type has its own pros and cons. If you're doing a lot of stuff close to home, isobutane canisters, they're easy, they're simple to use. I've never been through a town in the United States that was big enough to have an outdoor gear store that did not have isobutane canisters. But then again, if you're gonna be crossing borders a lot, you're gonna be in a lot of remote areas, maybe you wanna think about a stove like the Dragonfly so that you can use gasoline that you're putting in your motorcycle to also cook with. But that kind of stove also has its own pros and cons for usage and maintenance. No matter what stove you go with though, please remember to always have backup matches and a lighter, no matter if the stove that you go with has its own auto igniter. Those things can break. Having a matches or a lighter is actually also a part of the 10 essentials of the things that you need when you're going to be spending time in the backcountry anyhow. So things that you should be carrying. Yes, I have put on a heated jacket. Thank you for noticing. It is cold in my garage. Can't feel my fingertips. But shall we talk about cooking vessels next? There are so many options for pots and pans, you guys. I'm not going to be able to cover everything, but I will cover a few things that I want to highlight and bring to your attention. Starting with Stanley pots, which are a great budget option. I myself had a Stanley pot for a long time. It served me very well in the pilgrimage. I will note though, not nonstick. I could cook rice in it, noodles, that kind of stuff, but I could not cook an egg in it without having to do a whole lot of cleanup afterwards. Sea Summit makes excellent compact cooking gear, including their X line, which I'm sure you're probably familiar with by now if you've done any kind of research, because this nice little pot here collapsed to be tiny. And I was skeptical at first too. Know that Sea Summit does not recommend frying in this kind of pot because you will damage the silicone if you cook something in this pot without liquid in it. The great thing about purchasing into the Sea Summit, like X pot, that kind of line, is that their stuff nests together like this lovely frying pan. Look how nice that pot fits in that pan. Yes, I got a new pan. Thank you for noticing. I have personally settled on like the whole pot and a pan combo because that works better for me. I can cook rice in the pot, set it aside, all stuffed up so it stays warm, and fry veggies and that kind of stuff in the pan, and then just put it all together and eat it that way. There are also other brands that carry pots kind of like the Stanley, like the GSI Hallite. This is also a perfectly good pot. Not nonstick. You may also want to think about things like metal skewers or a grill rack if you want to cook over a campfire. My friends over at Two Wheels Big Life make room for a cast iron skillet in their personal setup, which definitely makes wonderful camp meals, but not all of us can afford the extra weight and space that a cast iron skillet would take up. But they're also pulling a trailer, so they can afford the space and the weight. See where I'm getting at? Where camp kitchen systems are very personal to what you want to do with them, what your personal bike setup is. There's so many factors. Really quick, I want to touch on water filtration, and water storage, because that is incredibly important when we're talking about food preparation at camp. If you're going to do any kind of camping at campgrounds or dispersed camping where there is not potable water, I highly encourage you have some way to treat that water or filter it. Having something is ultimately way better than nothing, especially if you end up at a campground that you thought had potable water but doesn't. Likewise, there's so many water bladder options out there. I prefer the heavy duty kind. This is my MSR dromedary bag that I've used for ages, and this is my new Sea Summit water cell that I'm super excited about. They are both 4 liters. Can you believe that? This is so much more compact than this. Even if you do carry a hydration bladder with you in a backpack or something, I still encourage you to have some kind of dromedary bag to store extra water with. Washing up always takes more water than it should, right? It does. All right, food preparation. You're going to need something to cut your food with, especially if you're not pre-prepping your food at home. If you're a weekender, you can pre-cut all of your veggies, pre-wash everything at home, put them in a little Ziploc bag, so all you do is dump it in the pan and cook it when you get to camp. So if you're a weekend warrior, highly recommend that route. It saves a lot of time in camp. And just because you think it'll be super romantic to do all the food prep in camp, it isn't always, especially if you've been riding all day. Anyway, and then I have this little martini bamboo cutting board that is my fave. It still hasn't broken. It's pretty impressive. It's kind of old now, but you can also get a dedicated plastic cutting board, or there are people who use the bottom of the X bowls as cutting boards. Totally an option for you, depends on your preference. Other things you can think about: do you want to take a dedicated vegetable peeler, or are you gonna take your chances with chopping your fingers off with a knife like I do? Bottle openers, can openers, graters. Think about tinfoil. If you are a person who loves yourself some campfire meals, tinfoil is a must. I will go over the 101 of tinfoil meals in the next video, but think about the tinfoil. You want to think about if you're going to bring any measuring tools, or if the bowls and cups that you have already have markers on them for quarter cups and tablespoons and that kind of stuff. If you're making more elaborate meals at camp, you want some way to measure what you're putting in, unless you're doing it all by sight, which more power to you. But I have this tiny little quarter cup measuring cup. It also has the tablespoons on the side. and ounces and all the good things. This has just been super invaluable, and it's so tiny. And since it's made of plastic, it doesn't break. Another thing that, isn't a camping thing, I just found in the regular kitchen section of a Walmart. I also highly encourage you to think about bringing a bandana or some kind of tablecloth to put between your workstation and the surface that you're working on, especially if you're working on like a picnic table that may or may not have a lot of bird poop on it. Things to think about. Or between your prep station and the dirt. Small things. The next thing is to keep in mind that you need a way to clean up afterwards. A pot scraper and a scrubber combo like this is super useful. Scrubber rags like this that have a coarse side and a soft side. I like little scrubber rags like this over a sponge because sponges can hold a lot of water and it can take a really long time for them to dry out. And if you keep them in a Ziploc bag after you're done using them, they can get moldy, blah, 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 blah. I don't like sponges. Then you're also going to need a way to dry those dishes. So some kind of kitchen towel. You don't have to take a whole kitchen towel. You can take a microfiber towel, like a small microfiber towel that packs down small. That's perfect. Something that is going to absorb liquid, but also dry quickly. And for those instances when you did more than just boil water, biodegradable soap, highly recommend. A lot of these wilderness wash soaps are highly concentrated, so you don't need anything more than a small drop to do your dishes. Antibacterial wipes and hand sanitizer is also something that should be a must-have for your camp kitchen setup because you want to wash your hands before you prepare any food that's going to go in your body. Also, a very important thing to keep in mind before you go on any camping trip is to think about where you're going to put your trash. I tend to take a gallon Ziploc bag or a stasher bag or something to put my trash in because I am one person. I don't produce a whole lot. But if you're going in a large group, think about bringing more than one trash bag. LN to you guys. Leave no trace. We'll talk about that again later. Other things that are super useful that people don't normally think about, because the cleanup process is never the first thing in our mind. We're always thinking about, I want to make this when I get to camp. Clothespins, super useful. Rubber bands, also super useful. Extra Ziploc bags, if you buy a big bag of pasta to cook at camp and then you have some left over, having some way to rebag that or close it up, so useful. The next thing I want you to think about is utensils and serving gear, bowls, cups, silverware, stuff they're going to use to stir. Eating utensils can also be used to stir food while you're cooking and that kind of stuff. Long handle spoons are super useful if you're eating out of a dehydrated bag. That way your hand doesn't get disgusting when you're reaching down into the bottom of the bag to get the rest of the food out. Long handle spoons, perfect for that. There are also so many eat-on-the-go, zero-waste kits that are out now, which is cool. Ignore my chopsticks. These aren't actually part of this kit, but I really love the Snow Peak chopsticks because they have the nice silicone end. They makes it super easy to grab stuff. And since they're super long, they're good for stirring up stuff when you're cooking too. If you haven't tried cooking with chopsticks, you guys, try it. Just try it. Utensils specifically to cook with, like my tiny spatula. You guys should be familiar with this by now. It's my favorite thing. Or you can use just a classic wooden spatula. Those are also super useful. Pieces like this though are kind of overkill and take up a lot of space unless you are camping with a lot of people and you're making meals for 3 to 4 people. You may also want to think about tongs, metal tongs if you're cooking over a campfire. Having a dedicated bowl to eat your oatmeal and food out of. Not totally necessary, but kind of nice. Or if you're making a more elaborate meal and you need to take something out of the pan and set it aside while you cook something else in the pan, having some place to put that food, useful. Having some kind of insulated mug for your beverage of choice, pretty nice. Where you're going hyper insulated, like the Hydro Flasks or the Yetis that are going to keep it hot for a really long time. My note about these kinds of insulated mugs is that if you're trying to drink it right away, and it's scalding hot, you're gonna have to wait a minute before you can drink it out of this kind of mug, or just a semi-insulated mug, like this kind of camp mug. It's not going to keep it as hot for as long, but it means you're gonna be able to drink it sooner than later. Speaking of hot beverages, maybe you wanna think about any special equipment you wanna bring along to meet your coffee needs. I'm personally a tea person, so all I need is a tea bag and some honey. There are so many ways to make coffee at camp, and there are a bazillion videos online about all the different ways to make coffee at camp. There are also instant packets, and that doesn't require any other kind of special equipment besides your cup. Let's talk about pantry stuff next. I know that this is starting to blur the line a little bit between recipes and camp kitchen setups, but a few good spices and oils and maybe some sauces can really bring out the flavor in food and just brings it up a whole level. I use little Nalgene squeeze bottles and jars to carry my spices and liquids in. It's cheaper and you get better quality ingredients than buying those like mixed spice jars. I'm sure that you've seen them. You also have way more control over what kind of spices you are bringing depending on what kind of food you enjoy making. A few spices and staples you may want to carry. Of course, salt is a big one. It's actually the biggest spice container that I have, and I need to refill it. Pepper is another, garlic powder, onion powder, basil, oregano, or you can make your own Italian seasoning. A lot of mixed herbs are a good bet, like parsley, paprika, cumin, cinnamon, ginger powder. For my spice lovers, cayenne powder, red pepper flakes. Curry powder is also a really good one to carry, and sugar. I normally just steal sugar packets from like hotels and restaurants, that kind of stuff. Steal is a strong word. I've never taken like a whole handful from a restaurant, like one or two, you know? They were there for me to use. I just decided to take it and use it later. That's how I'm going to justify that. Real garlic and onions obviously are going to taste a whole lot better, but in a pinch, the powdered versions can fill in the gaps. I also normally carry some kind of soy sauce. That's always a good bet, especially if you like any kind of stir fries or you like to make rice. You can either carry it in like a little container like this, like I do, or if you get takeout when you're at home, these little packets of soy sauce. Super useful, very packable. Olive oil, also super versatile. You can take any oil you want, like coconut oil is good because it can solidify and become liquid again. Or regular or vegetable oil is also a good option. Bouillon cubes, chicken or vegetable or beef or whatever. These are so good for flavoring rice, you guys. Yes. Other things you might want to take along, but I do not. Ketchup packets, mustard packets, mayo packets, hot sauce, that kind of stuff. I hear hot sauce is very useful for flavoring food that maybe didn't turn out so good. Moving on to staples that are just a good thing to have as a backup or make a meal stretch a little bit farther. I always have a few packets of rice. I pre-measure and package them at home, so each little package is a half a cup of rice, which is just the right amount for me. Pasta is also a really good staple to bring along on the bike. Orzo is an excellent travel pasta. So is angel hair to a certain extent. Other shaped pastas like rotini and bow tie pasta and that kind of stuff, since they have so many more sharp edges, are more likely to puncture whatever packaging they're in while they're rattling around on the bike. Couscous, also another really good staple to bring along on the bike. Highly recommend carrying hot cocoa, a tea bag, some coffee, some kind of hot beverage, because even if you're traveling in the middle of summer, most of the time the temperature drops a few degrees when the sun goes down. So having some kind of hot beverage is just nice. You can also get powdered milk to make those like packaged Alfredo things you get a little bit creamier. Instant oatmeal, always a good bet. Also having like a little packet of tuna or a can of Spam. Those kinds of things are an easy way to add protein to a meal. Nuts are an underutilized and fantastic way to add protein and texture to pretty much any meal. Sunflower seeds, almonds, pine nuts, peanuts, pistachios, cashews. Cans of soup or a can of chili is an excellent bailout food. You do not necessarily have to keep the can on your bike. You can just stop in at like pretty much any grocery store or even a gas station and pick up a can of soup before you head into camp if you can't find anything else. I normally have one can of condensed chicken noodle soup on the bike pretty much every single trip as my bailout food, because I would rather eat this than ramen noodles. The thing about having a good pantry and a couple of bailout foods is that a lot of the things here I can mix together and make a whole meal out of. Pantry lists are so specific to the person and what kind of food you like to cook. So pick a few recipes that you like to eat, pick out the spices and things that you need to make that meal, and plan to take those along in your next trip and see how it goes. And that way, all you have to do on your trip is pick up the whole ingredients like the vegetables and the meat, and you already have the spices and the liquids you need to make the rest of the meal. Obviously, this won't work for every recipe out there, especially more complicated recipes or things you need an oven for, but you get the idea. The other thing with motorcycle camp cooking is that you kind of learn to make do with what you got. There are a lot of versatile recipes like stir fries and different kinds of pasta where you could switch out ingredients depending on whether you have them or not, which makes them really great recipes when you're on the road or if you're just going to go camping for a weekend. All right, beautiful people, I hope that you enjoyed today's video. I can tell that it's already getting a little bit long, so I'm going to split this up into 2 parts. So next week we're going to talk about organization, tips for packing a cooler, foil packed stuff, and also important food safety information that you need to remember when you're preparing food at camp. Remember to use my code Magpie for 10% off your order at motocampnerd.com. Links to everything in my personal camp kitchen setup will also be linked down in the description. And end screen crew question. Are you a must-have coffee person in the morning, a tea person like me, secret third hot beverage option, or do you not need anything when you wake up in the morning? You just pack up a camp and leave? What must that be like? I don't know.